Hey everyone, so this is going to be a little different than usual. If you've seen my lives, you're like, hey, Phil didn't introduce her. What's going on here? So I'm here with my buddy Mark McInnes. Mark's on the other side of the world, and we thought, boy, there's so many sales engagement tools, sales enablement tools, sales everything tools that we should talk about them. And then we've both agreed that a lot of times salespeople get stuck because they feel they have to use these tools and they're not actually helping them sell, but they're not even really helping them scale, right, Mark?
Yeah. Look, I'm going to be a bit controversial straight away, and I think that a lot of these sales engagement platforms are going to start dying as of 2022. So I won't mention names. I think everyone knows, what we're talking about with some of these platforms. But anything that's driving cadence for you in an automated process is on the way out. I'm calling it. It's that sales engagement platforms are dead.
Wow. So that's so interesting, right? Because I know that, when I'm training sales, that part of the most important thing we do is we create a cadence, right? Don't we create a messaging cadence? Is it important?
Well, I wrote a book on writing cadence, so I'm all in on cadence. Yeah.
Right?
I think you've got a copy, right?
Yeah, right? So we're all, let's be clear, we're all in on cadence. We're all out on automated cadence, right? So just send. So to be clear, you don't have to use these tools for automation, but sadly, that's often what happens, right, Mark?
Yeah, so I think they were a good idea when they came in. I think that the premise behind it initially was good, but I think we've been told a bunch of lies, and our customers are suffering. But what's suffering in between that is sales results and salespeople's efforts and salespeople's morale. And we've been told a few lies by some of these vendors about, what's going to happen when we use them. And, sales leadership are telling lots of lies to their salespeople right now around why they should be using engagement platforms. So, when you think about a sales leader, when they go to buy one of these platforms and they want to implement it, right? So you've been a sales leader and I've been a sales leader. You're a sales leader right now, right? So what are some of the things that we're constantly trying to focus on as a sales leader? We're trying to increase the sales team's effectiveness. Right. So when we see a tool that's sold to us and think, this is going to help your team be more effective, we then say to our sales team, this is going to make it easier for you to engage your sales team, engage your prospects, your buyers. The reality is what we're hoping for is we're going to get, as sales leaders, we're going to get some visibility and some accountability into outbound activities. And so what happens is I then partner as a sales leader with the marketing team, and I say, let's automate the first email, the third email, the fifth email. Let's automate the follow-ups. And then all the sales team need to do is they need to make the phone calls in between. So just using a simple email and phone-based outreach, right? But what happens is it removes all the personalization and the relevance. And as a result, all we're seeing is lots of email activity and lots of phone activity on the increase. Results are on the decrease, and we're training our buyers to not respond. So we're actually smashing the sales team's morale as a result.
Yeesh. Wow. That's horrible, right? I mean, that's the last thing we want. We do want our sales team to be more accountable. Of course we do. But that starts with leaders being accountable. Let's be really clear. Leaders have to be accountable for real results. And the scaling method, if that really worked, if all you had to do was send 5 automated emails and make 3 phone calls, well, that would be pretty easy, right? Do you find that that's all you have to do these days, Mark?
Well,
magic number 8, we get a date, right? Isn't that how it works?
Well, I mean, ideally, yeah, but I mean, it's not working that way, and we can prove that through some really valuable data that's publicly available. Everyone can get this data. So, there's data from HubSpot that tracks, how many emails are being sent, how many sales emails are being sent, how many sales phone calls are being made, what the response rates are from those emails, and the data's horrific, right? So, again, this is publicly available. So if you go to some of this data and filter it by geographical location, you can start to really get some really clear trends. And what we're seeing in APAC, so if you go over to region there, and then if we click on emails being sent, so you're in deals created right now. So if you go a bit further up the top.
That's right.
Sales emails, region. And then you'll see that the green line's APAC. Yeah. So have a look at November. Right, so that's 226% more emails being sent in November 2021, sales emails, so not just into business emails, sales emails, as compared to January 2020. So if your buyers are getting 100 emails in January 2020, they're now getting 226. Right? That's a massive amount of increased activity. Right? And if you click on response rates, which is up the top, and then again, if we go, so we're in region, you can see that there's a decline in response rates. So look, we're down below 40%. That's worse. Look at that. 51%. So if you were getting 20 emails responded to in January 2020, and you're a salesperson in APAC, you're now getting 10. So this data's clear, right? It's not working. Like,
so more email, Mark? Is that the key? More email? We got to send more?
I think we're already proving it's not. Yeah. I mean, that's the numbers, right? This is not my data. Like, this is publicly available. And so what's happening is people are saying, okay, let's install one of these software programs. Let's make it easier for our sales team to be more effective or efficient. And what the sales leaders are saying is, let's get more outbound out there.
Yeah.
It's not working, man.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about, what does work then. Let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because there are some great tools out there. For instance, I really like the tool Lavender. Great tool. It helps me write better emails, although I will tell you, I wrote one, I forgot to send it through Lavender, and I actually had someone tell me that it sounded like an automated email. It's kind of bad, right? So I reread it. I think she was having a bad day, but that's okay, right? So that happens sometimes. But those tools, that's not what we're talking about, right? To be clear, Mark, we're not talking about tools that enable us to communicate better, a Grammarly or a Lavender tool or Vidyard or something like that, right?
Yep. I think there's some tools there that are really great that are helping us be better. Okay. Another one you didn't mention, Crystal Knows. I'm a fan of that. Yep. That's really helpful. There's even things like Lucia, which help you get contact data. There's a lot of tools that are helpful, but I think anything that's automating the outreach piece is failing us. And it was a good idea in 2018. I thought I was a fan, but it's just not working. Like, we're not seeing the results. And if I'm using hard data here, let's remove that. And the teams that I work with, we're not seeing responses. We're not seeing results when you start to automate stuff. And the automation just doesn't work the way it needs to. You're familiar with combo prospecting, right?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
By Tony Hughes. And the concept's pretty easy, right? So I send you an email, or I give you a phone call, you don't answer. So then I flick you a quick text message, and I send you a quick email that says, "Hey Phil, just sent you a text message. This is what I wanted to talk about." Right? Bang, bang, bang. 3 touches really quickly. What we see is people go, "Oh, let's make it easy. We've got this tool that we're spending a lot of money on. We'll automate that third outreach, which is the email." So I call you and send you a text message, and then 4 hours later, my automation tool sends you the email that says, "As per my phone call." And the effectiveness piece is lost, because the whole concept behind the combo prospecting is that you get hit, with some outreach really quickly to stand out from all of the automated pieces.
Yeah.
But we've got this tool. Let's use it. Says marketing or says sales ops, and both of those functions in businesses I love. But sometimes we're just using these tools because we've got them. We're not really using these tools to make it better from the buyer side, and we're losing our way here.
Yeah. So buyer side is so important, right? If we think about the buyer wants relevancy. You mentioned that, right? The buyer certainly wants responsiveness, right? That's important too. And then to your point about accountability, they want to know that you're talking directly to them, right? And they're accountable and feeling that, if you do that, you'll be someone then that I can trust, someone that I can work with, someone that I can spend some time with. And often these automation tools make us sound more stilted, or they're too late, to your point, right? And it isn't just about speed. It's also about relevancy and about a little bit of customization on that. And one of the things about, templates or automation, and Will Allred said this today, he said, templates are supposed to be temporary. Templates are supposed to be temporary. Right? We want to test them, see how they're working. We want to learn what does work, throw out what doesn't, and then evolve, right? Change with that. And yet often automation stays in place for a month or 2 months or 6 months. and it's gone, right? It's just gone. There's no more effectiveness left. So, Mark, you were saying when we were in the green room that you've got, a perfect example, right? You've got 3,000 people that are your target. So let's walk through that math, because I think that's helpful.
Yeah. So, and this is why I think the demise of these engagement tools are going to happen gradually over different geographical locations. And I've got this insight because I train people in Europe, particularly the UK. I train a lot of people here in APAC and Australia and New Zealand specifically. And I also train people in North America, right? So a lot of the businesses that I work with have teams across all three locations. So there's differences to the way that we communicate and engage with our buyers in those three geographical locations. You can't just take what works in Australia and plaster that across. And you can't take what works in the US and plaster that across here in the UK. It doesn't work. Excuse me. I know that for a fact. And because my teams are doing that. But when you think about these sales engagement platforms and their desire to try and increase volume, and if I look at my available target market here in ANZ, Australia and New Zealand, I've got about 3,000 companies or VPs of sales, head of sales, that sort of thing, that I could sell my sales training services to. If I was to then use a sales enablement engagement tool to reach out to 100 of them every day, which would be pretty easy to do, right? I would be reaching out to 500 of them every week. That would mean that within 6 weeks, I would have reached out to every single person inside my target market. Now, if we use a Cadence system that was going to reach out across a 3 or 4 week process, mate, 7 or 8 times, whatever it is, across 4 weeks, I'm giving those people a 2-week break before I then restart that cadence. Like, how many of those people are going to be friends with me at the end of 2 cadences? How many of them are going to unsubscribe? Lots. Right, so I'm going to have a much better strategy if I reach out to 5 or 6 people every day, completely manual, super relevant. To your point about the templates set us up to say, go and have a look at Phil's business, see how many SDRs he's employing, right, and then say, hey Phil, I see you're employing a couple of new SDRs in Auckland, New Zealand. Just wondering what you're going to do to help them, hit the ground running. Right, so I'm using a sales training. I've got some content that I'd love to share with you. We've worked with other businesses around the same size as you, and what we find is typically the first 3 weeks are really important. Would you like some ideas around how you could make those 3 weeks, impactful and exciting for your new reps? Now, not everyone's going to respond, right? But the template is designed for you to start that conversation. What happens is people take that template and they just insert Phil, business name, number of reps, and then press go. And within no time at all, it sounds stilted because it's not relevant.
Yeah, we do that too much, right? We spend way too much time on that. We spend way too much time coming up with those great templates and then just plugging them in and letting them roll. And if that worked, right, we wouldn't need salespeople. We just have marketing teams that do that stuff, right?
That's right.
So
going back to those numbers, right? So I think things, tools like Zoom Info and Apollo and that are great. They've allowed us to build out these lists more effectively. So even in countries like North America, which has got about 320 million people, if I remember correctly, right? We've gone from 5 years ago, just send this email to anybody in sales, right? Now we can use those tools and go, just send VP of sales, head of sales in, the West Coast that are in businesses that are turning over more than 100 million, but less than 500 million, or in IT. And, so our lists are getting smaller. So the sales engagement platforms are just going, okay, well, I can send out 1,000 emails, and our lists are getting narrow. So we're just spamming less people more often. And that's why I think these platforms are going to end. We'll see it end here in APAC first, simply because of the population. We'll then see it end in Europe and the UK because of they've got a really strong desire to get rid of spam emails in their communication. Right. And then last but not least, I think the US will be the last one to go. Phil, you're on mute. I don't know what's happened there. You've muted yourself.
Yeah, I hit the wrong button there. So, I was going to say that I agree with you 100%, right? I think that you're right on the money with that. I think Canada is already strong with Castle. I think, GDPR, while it doesn't prevent us from sending emails, it does prevent us from just holding on to people's data forever and using that. And I would say, to your point, in the US even, if they block your domain, you're not getting it, right? I would say worse than spam, right? It doesn't even get delivered and you don't even know. Like, I could have your email address and never be able to reach you. It's like, holy crap, right? I mean, I think about my phone the same way. So we have to be more relevant, right? We have to stop focusing on the scale at how fast we can do this and start really using some real sales tactics. So you mentioned, you're going to research how many reps. I would say you need to include one more data point, right? So what is that? Is the company growing? Is it shrinking? Is that company hiring or not, right? Do they have something newsworthy in order to do that? Now the challenge is, so many would say, well, I'll just automate that. I'll just, insert that as a merge field. Well, now people are getting smarter, right? On LinkedIn, they add symbols to their name so that it shows as a control character when you send it out, so they know you're a spammer. So Mark, I know you train a lot. I know I train a lot here. So talk to me about some of these ways that salespeople can get back selling and stop worrying about these crazy tools that aren't helping them.
So I think we need to just take our mind away from how can we do more and just start thinking first of all about how can we do better. And something that I've been talking about a lot last year and I'll continue to do this year is, let's slow the process down to speed up the result. Right now, let's use some extremes here, but maybe we need to be thinking about new business conversations at a ratio of 2 to 10. So how can you do 10 pieces of outreach today that are super relevant, that are more likely to start a conversation instead of sending out those 100 pieces via your sales engagement platform, right? And as sales leaders, we need to be drilling into our team, and when I say drilling, I mean as in military drill, practice, rehearsal. I'm an ex-army guy, for those of you who have forgotten, and go, okay, what are the things that our buyers are worried about? What are they worried about right now? How does that sit with what's happening in our geographical business situation? So over here, we're worried about inflation. I know you guys are worried about inflation too. What's that going to do to people's prices? Does it mean that we're going to have to increase our prices shortly? How do we have those conversations? Does that mean that our buyers are going to have to increase their prices? Are they worried about that? Can our software, for example, and the effectiveness, if we're selling software, can the software that we're selling help our buyers be more effective and therefore validate the reason why they need to increase their prices, as an example, right? So if you're just going to say, look, man, we can help you save time and money, you're just going to disappear like everybody else. Right? Everyone's been using that since they've been selling photocopiers. If you can say, hey, look, people like you are typically worried about what's going to happen in inflation, how inflation's going to impact the business environment in the next 6 months. Am I right? Yep. Okay. Well, we've got some ideas. Would you like to know about that? It's a tougher conversation, right, than time and money. But I think it's worthwhile taking the time to learn how to have those conversations.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's so important. Let's break up what you just said though, and that email, because I think that's important. First, you're relevant. Second, you offered some insight and asked permission to share it.
Yeah.
So many times they get slammed together, right? So first, we have the insight. That's really important, right? Then ask the permission. Are you interested in seeing this? And then third, share it and start that conversation. Super, super important, Mark. I like how you made those distinctions. So how do we, to your point, right, slowing the process down to speed up the results, drill. That also means, though, that leaders have to stop measuring volume and start measuring value, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of that means we need to start thinking about where the wins are outside of just getting a meeting. So a conversation is a great win. If I ring up somebody and speak to the gatekeeper, you could argue that call's been unsuccessful. But you could also argue that I've now got the gatekeeper's phone name. So when I ring up tomorrow or in 2 days' time, instead of saying, hey, is Phil there? I can say, hey, Mark, I know you're the gatekeeper, or I know that you help Phil on a day-to-day basis. What's the best way for me to get into his calendar? So the conversation can be richer. Straight away, you know their name. Hey, I called you a couple of days ago. How you going? Like it's better. So that's a win, right? But too many times we think, oh no, that I didn't get a meeting. I really bummed out. It was a crappy day. But no, man, you had a conversation. You now know that A, they use your product and services. B, they've got somebody else contracted until the end of June. C, You've got the right person in the right business. D, you know who the gatekeeper is. They're all wins.
Yeah. Every new piece of data, every new piece of information that you gather is super important. And if you develop a relationship with the person at the front, you might find out that the person that you're trying to call isn't even the decision maker, or that they only take calls after 6 p.m. or whatever it is, because they're going to also be invested in your success. Now with that, Mark, where does, are referrals even more important now than ever before to kind of cut through some of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, I'm taking a breath because I'm just thinking about the bucket of worms I'm about to open. Yeah, and I think, referrals, why do you get referrals, Phil? It's based on your relationships, right? So whether it be a 2-minute relationship, whether it be a relationship that you fostered over LinkedIn, when I like your content, you like my content, I go, yeah, it feels great. You go, no worries, Mark. But so that's building rapport, like it or not, right? All these things take a little bit of time. But when we put people into SDR roles with a fake promise of being an AE in 6 months or 9 months, how much desire does that mindset build around building a relationship for the next period of time? Right, we're creating a quantity play by putting such short timelines on the expectations for people to stay in these roles. Sales development is a tough gig. It's a hard thing to do. It's one of the most difficult parts of the sales process. Have a look at any polls on LinkedIn or anywhere, and you say, what part of the sales process is the most difficult? Everyone says first conversation. Yet, time and time again, thanks to the predictable revenue model, what do? We get our first salespeople and we put them into the most difficult role. We're making it worse by saying, just do this for 6 months, use the technology, don't worry about it, and then within 9 months we'll give you an AE's role. Why would I bother building relationships?
Yeah.
But you and I both know referrals and relationships are what's going to open more doors than any.
Yeah, so much so, right? Referrals are absolutely based on relationship, and as you said, they take time, they take effort. That's the other thing, right? They're not one way, which means I give you, you give me, which is salesmanship at its core, right? Because I want to give you value, you want to give me value. I'm going to buy from you, I'm going to give you money, and you're going to give me a solution to a problem. Likely that's a massive, massive problem for me, not just something that's, flavor of the moment or that benefits you. That's the other thing, right? So we're not able to see, is this an urgent problem, right? It's hard to generate urgency from automation, right?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And I just want to round out that piece there. What we're talking about here is reciprocity. What are the 3 pieces of reciprocity? Be the first to give, make it timely, and make it perceived as valuable. Right, and valuable to them, to your buyers, not to you. So, that's how reciprocity works, and that's the foundation of most relationships. So there you go. All right, sorry, man. I feel like I've lost the track. I jumped ahead there. So we were talking about referrals and reciprocity, which I think is super important. I would say, study Influence by Cialdini. Because it'll help, right? I mean, if you're a salesperson, you're listening to this, you're wanting to get a better sales job, read Influence by Robert Cialdini. It's a great book, and then practice it. This doesn't happen overnight. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of that burnout piece of the SDR to AE, and then in the middle of that often is combustion, right? They end up on a performance improvement plan because they can't make the number. It's just, right, like mathematically, that is super hard. In the first conversation, getting somebody to answer the phone, to respond to your email, to actually respond to an outreach is super hard. So let's talk about that, Mark. So what are some good ways, if we're a sales leader, to prevent our SDRs from getting burnt out so they can stay hot? I think we need to be acting faster than end of the quarter, to be honest. I did some programs recently with one business who's really focused on building its sales team and its sales function out, and they're great. Big shout out to the Job Adder team. They're a global team. They're awesome. And we had some people come into the team mid-quarter, and all we did was focus on preparing for the start of the next quarter. So you're giving them a head start, giving them a couple of weeks. It was a 3-week head start. So they'd done their onboarding. It's like, okay, let's start building out, some pipeline and practicing your outreach a couple of weeks before we start to hit the first of the quarter, the first week in the quarter. So a lot of times you see the numbers roll around at the end of the quarter, and it's like, okay, now you're on a performance plan, or, if you've got to get the next quarter right, or you're going to be on a performance plan. I just think we need to be, breaking that down as leaders and shortening the crisis. So instead of creating a crisis every 90 days, create a crisis every 5 days or every 3 days. Why? And you know what I'm going to say here, right? Because we chunk it down, right? Having one conversation is much easier than saying you need to have had 12 conversations by the end of the fortnight.
Yeah.
So you got, Phil, do you think you could have one conversation by the end of today?
Sure, absolutely, right? I mean, I can do that. Or at least I can get prepared, right? At least I can get prepared for tomorrow's conversation. At least I can practice it, right? So to your point, I think that's so important, right? So important that folks do that. But, I like, I have a kind of a 5P that I train through. Prioritization of what's most important begins with the sales leader saying, here's what matters. Then your preparation piece comes in. Here we go. Let's prepare. Let's get ready. Then we practice it. Right? Then we practice it, and we have the practice. Either we role play, we practice on maybe some low possibility accounts or something, right? Then we perform. Then we do the work, right? The fourth one, and then we perfect it. We get better, we improve, we iterate, and then we can move around that so that as we go, then to your point about breaking it apart into 5, now if we took each day focused on a P, by the end of the week, we would have a better process. We would have something that's iterative, that works for Mark, not just for the sales team.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. The 4 Ps, 5 Ps. That's good. Well done. So I think, but by creating a smaller crisis more often, you're much more. So, let's say we agree that today you've got to do one conversation, right? And you come up with a plan to do that. If we get to the end of the day or the start of tomorrow and our catch up is, well, how did you go yesterday? No, I didn't get the conversation. Okay, so did you said you were going to do this to get those conversations? Did you do that? Oh, no, because, I had a proposal to do, and then I had how it works. I had a demo to prepare for. Okay, all right. So, what are we going to do? So the crisis is much smaller and much easier to manage, right? And that fear for the rep is much smaller than, you're now on a performance program, and if you don't make your quota this quarter, you're out. So it's easier to catch up on 2 than it is 12. So just keep chunking that down, and away we go. So
yeah, well, it's easier for the sales leader too. Let's be honest, right? It's hard to put out the fire if the whole house is burned down. It's easier if it's only a week in and you break it apart. I mean, in a quarter's 12 weeks. Okay. Yep. What does that look like, right? I mean, as a sales leader, that's just easier to do than to think about, oh, crap, I have to catch this all up. And that feedback, Mark, in the first week of the quarter, you were really crappy. I don't remember that. I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, right? My rep's not going to remember that.
Yeah, and I think there's a real fear about micromanagement here, and there's a difference between coaching and micromanagement, right? So micromanagement is, and there is micromanagement is a suitable management tool in some instances, right? So when people are just so frozen that they can't take action, and I'm sure you've had reps. I've had these reps work for me before, where they just become so. They're paralyzed, right? They don't know what to do. And you have micromanagement is, okay, I need you to do this. Come back to me, right? I'm going to help you break into some rhythms that are going to help you. That's micromanagement. That's valuable. Micromanagement, and we all know what that looks like. It's like almost like a form of bullying, right? And no one wants that. And sales leaders, I think, get scared of that or being labeled as one of those managers. And that stops them from doing those micro coaching sessions, which is actually going to help people achieve. And as a result, we leave it to our pipeline meeting every fortnight or every week or every month. And by then, like to your point, it's too late. It's often too late. And what are you coaching at that point? You're coaching, the entire pipeline, you're not coaching a specific instance, right? So,
Yeah.
like you don't say to somebody in the basketball court, and I know nothing about basketball, but, just throw it in the hoop. Like, all you got to do is hit it in the hoop. Like, that's too macro, right? Golf is more my spin, right? So you don't just say just hit the ball in the hole. You say, you've got to hold the club like this, and then it's micro management when you're being trained how to hit a golf ball, right? Keep your feet straight, like keep your shoulders, lean over the ball, right? It's micro. And that's the way we've got to coach our sales team. And I'm sorry to use the sport analogy because some people don't like it. But instead of saying, just hit the ball in the hole, which is, get the conversation, you've got to be going, okay, well, how are you opening up those conversations? What are you saying? What research are you doing? What's your talking point? How are you introducing that? And just focus on those little pieces at a time. That's going to help people be more successful. And this goes, but there's a rep side of this as too. Reps need to be able to be coached. You need to be coachable. Every time someone says, "Have you thought about changing something?" they're not telling you you're no good. So there is a responsibility for the rep here as well. So it's not just all on the leader, because sometimes the reps can't take it.
Yeah. Well, so I like what you said there, and I would say this, right? Micromanage the process, not the person. Yep. So break that process apart into micro pieces so that I can see where it went wrong. Because to your point, right, at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, even the end of the week sometimes, Mark, I'm going to be like, well, I don't know. I just didn't get any meetings. Well, why not? I don't really know. Well, get more meetings next week, right? To your point. Keep trying to put the ball in the hole. Like, well, that doesn't help me at all, right? Like, what sucks here? What part of that is broken? Is it, is it the research? Is it the approach? Is it the fact that I'm not preparing? Is it the fact that I'm just letting stuff fly? I mean, what is that? That also helps us train better. Then every week we pick one process, one piece of the process, and coach to that. That's a laser coaching session. 15, 20 minutes, I can make that happen. And now we feel better because now we can improve that one piece. Now we start to see some success. And we know a lot of sales is right between your ears, right? It's in your brain more than it is anywhere else. So we show some success, and now we can move forward, right?
Yep. Micro or incremental improvements over time create significant outperformance. Instead of trying to fix everything all at once, just work on one thing at a time, which I think is what you've just said. So I won't.
Yeah. No, right on. So Mark, as we're looking here, I know you are a wealth of knowledge. I learn a lot from you. I love your podcast, right? So I recommend people go check you out at markmc.co. Lots of great stuff there. Follow Mark on LinkedIn. But Mark, other than yourself, which is one of my favorite resources, what are you reading or what are you watching to keep yourself sharp and to stay ahead?
So what I'm reading right now is right here on my desk. I didn't know you were going to ask me that. So Problem Prospecting by
cool.
Stuart Taylor. He's with Infract, I think. So this is really cool. I've been reading that, and then the Ryan Research's got a really little handbook that I've been reading as well, which I love. So, but I spend a lot of time consuming stuff. So I'm watching YouTube. I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for new tools. So I would tell other people to get on there. The great thing about these platforms is there's so much stuff that it's easy to digest. But the challenge is, how do you put it into play? And the big challenge I want everyone to be aware of is you can't just take my stuff and cut and paste it, right? And this is the template thing you were talking about, right? So if I post here's a great cold calling model, this is a great cold calling model that works for me with my coaching process, right? What you have to do is you have to take that and you have to take, some of the stuff that you share and some of the stuff that Josh Braun shares and then mix it all up like a cake and then come up with your own version of that cake. Constantly I'll be training and people will say, what about a permission-based opener? XYZ trainer says, you have to use those. I'm like, well, if it works for you, that's great. But, if you're trying to sell yourself as a peer, you can't use a permission-based opener, right? Because it sets you up as being subservient, right? Hey, Phil, I'm sorry for calling you out of the blue. I know you weren't expecting it. Can I get 30 seconds to share with you why I called? That's not saying I'm your peer and I've got some great insights to share with you. That's saying, would you do me a favor? Right. So it depends how you want to set yourself up. So there's lots of content, but just make sure you kind of textualize it for the way you're selling. Don't just take it, and try and use that template. I think we've covered that bit, yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think context is so important, right? And I appreciate you sharing that. I would say what I'm consuming, I'm diving back through Atomic Habits to microize my stuff as well and break that apart. And from there, my favorite podcast that I love for sales, that I learned so much about, but you have to contextualize. I want to be really clear here because they're all over the place with action, is the 30 Minutes to President's Club. So Armand and Nick are great. Yeah, Armand and Nick do such a great job. I can't stress it enough, though, but take one episode or take one of their recaps and see how does this fit for you, right? If you're not getting good sales training or sales coaching from your organization, or you're the lone wolf salesperson, find someone like that you can learn from, that you can spend some time with, and then play with it, right? Break it apart, figure out what your process is, and micromanage your own process. You can do that, and that can help you succeed. So, Mark, I'm going to let you have the last word here, man. We call this stop scaling, start selling. So what's the one thing you want people to hear or to remember or to repeat that we'd maybe, that people need to hear about this?
Get serious about smart targeting. Get serious about, really how narrow can you take your, how smaller groups can you put your prospecting lists into? Because the wider the list, the more generic your message has to be. So how narrow? So I think that's the first place that you can start. Go geographical, go company size, go stage of business, go title. Like how many of those can, and then get little bundles of people, and then go, is that messaging going to be relevant for that group of 20 people? Now you're starting to think about, you're going to sound less automated, and you're going to get more conversations because it's going to be more relevant. So relevancy is important today over personalization.
Awesome. Love that. So check Mark out if you're not already following him. Find him on LinkedIn and get to know my friend Mark McInnes. Mark, this is great, man. I really appreciate it. We got to do this again. Hopefully, folks are going to stop scaling, start selling. And the big takeaway that I got is microize everything you do. The process, microize your target, microize your messaging, and you can win. Great stuff.
Thanks, Phil.
Mark. Thanks,
Loved
buddy.
it.
I appreciate it.